been just over 2 months now since a submersible on its way to the Titanic wreckage imploded at a depth of about 12,000 feet, killing all 5 people on board. Now, new reporting in Vanity Fair explains how that disaster was years in the making because of repeatedly ignored warning signs. Joining us now, the author of that piece, Susan Casey. The details are from her new book titled Underworld, Journeys to the Depths of the Ocean. Susan, it's great to have you with us. So, you know, the public fascination with this story a couple of months ago was you have these people and the clock is ticking and the oxygen is running out, and will they find them and will they survive? But people like you who've studied this, and we talked about James Cameron, came out very quickly and basically said it imploded. Not only did it implode, but it could have been prevented. And we heard words like hubris and recklessness and everything else. So take us inside what led us to that terrible moment.
Well, those are all accurate words. The deep sea submersible community is a very small, tight-knit one. And there was a lot of effort at the beginning to try to help OceanGate to steer them to a different course than building a sub out of a material that was known not to be, suitable for diving to 4,000 meters, which is almost 13,000 feet, and to build it in that shape. The really important shape in deep sea exploration is a sphere, because when you get down to 4,000 meters, you have about 6,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. And a sphere is the only shape that distributes that pressure completely symmetrically, so there's no weak spots. So there were so many problems with that sub from design to inception to construction that were very evident to pretty much everybody who looked at it. So how does it happen then, Susan? If it's so obvious to people who really understand this stuff, how does that get built? How is it allowed to go where it went? What happened? There aren't any laws or regulations that force somebody to build a sub a certain way unless they're operating it commercially within the territorial waters of the United States, which OceanGate very specifically did not. So there is a process that all deep sea subs go through, and there aren't that many of them. I mean, there are major engineering feat to be able to dive that deep. They are certified, almost like peer-reviewed by external agencies that specially do this. It takes years. It's very expensive. They just skip that entire step.
My father actually was his career was in nuclear submarines in the Navy, and the Navy would have these submersibles where they would go to the bottom of the ocean, but but highly regulated, highly tested. Do you think, in terms of the people that decided to get on board with this, it cost so much money? Do you know anything about the people who decided to do this? Did they do due diligence to figure out whether or not it was safe? Did the high price tag give them false assurance that it was safe?
I did know one of the men on the submersible. He's one of the characters in the book that I wrote about deep sea exploration that sort of brought me in contact with OceanGate, the underworld. And he was one of the most experienced deep sea submersible pilots, and not just today, but in history. He was renowned. And so nobody could figure out what he was doing on it. But I think with people who are buying tickets, there was a range of understanding about it. There was a certain type of person that just wants to do it and thinks it's going to be safe, most likely, but are willing to roll the dice. And then there were probably people who had less understanding of it. I think there was a lot of theater around it to make it look like it was safe. I just think, let me just put it this way. Do not get into a deep sea submersible if you're not in a spherical pressure hull and it is not certified and gone through this incredibly rigorous process, because safety is the central fact of this. Any endeavors in the deep ocean, you just know it's the riskiest environment on Earth. And these subs in general are very safe. They had no fatalities for 50 years prior to the Titan. The Titan was one of a kind and not in a good way. So,
so Susan, I've been reading afterwards, read your article and others, and the one common denominator for people who actually knew what they were talking about, like you, is that the margin of error is so extraordinarily small. And if there's just a fraction of a piece of the material that flicks off, the entire thing will explode because the difference in pressure. Can you explain that and explain again how the margin of error is so extraordinarily small here?
Well, yeah, pressures of 6,000 pounds per square inch are kind of non-negotiable in the deep ocean. So, in fact, deep sea subs are engineered with all kinds of redundancies, multiple ways so that they're fail-safe. If something goes wrong, there are 4 other systems to back it up. There should be no single point of failure. And this is all math, right? Like, so we know that the materials that are used by everybody but the Titan are completely predictable. Titanium, syntactic foam, these materials are not going to fail. They are, and if something goes wrong, you're going to come back up no matter what. There are all kinds of other issues that submersibles have to worry about, like fire within the capsule, entanglement, especially on a wreck like the Titanic. But nobody's out there worrying that their sub is going to implode. This has never happened before, and it will never happen again.
Stockton Rush, the OceanGate CEO, who was on board the submersible and died. The conclusion, Susan writes, if Rush had listened to the warnings from underwater experts and respected the laborious amount of testing needed to make his submersible safe, the 5 people on board the Titan would be alive today. That new piece is online now for Vanity Fair, and the new book is titled Underworld: Journeys to the Depths of the Ocean. So fascinating. Susan Casey, great to meet you. Thanks for being here.